Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for May 18th, 2023. Let me begin by reminding you that there will be no update posted tomorrow. It's a holiday in Germany and I'm going to take some time with my family. Today I want to take up three topics. The first is an update on the dangerous delusion that still exists in some Western intelligence agencies and military that Ukraine can win a war against Russia. Secondly, a brief update on the release of the Durham report on U.S. intelligence fraud in Russiagate. And third, the significance of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s accusation that the CIA was responsible for the assassination of his uncle, President John F. Kennedy, and his warning of the danger of nuclear war coming from the U.S. military-industrial complex, which is committed to permanent war. So let's begin with the Ukraine situation. There's a growing recognition that if Ukraine is to survive as a nation, it's time to negotiate a settlement. Not the one Zelensky wants, which is essentially a surrender of Russia, but one in which Ukraine agrees to the terms of being a neutral country, no NATO engagement, and protection for the people of the Donbass and through regional autonomy. Now, there's an interesting report from Seymour Hersh about a push coming from Poland and other Eastern European countries demanding that the Zelensky government negotiate an end to the war. The costs of the war, including the flow of refugees, the military costs, and so on, are too much for them. Now, this hasn't been confirmed by other sources, although there is talk about this, and it does cohere with what the Pentagon has been saying. The question from the Pentagon is, where is the spring offensive? And officials are very skeptical, as indicated by the release of documents, that such a spring offensive would work. Russia's military barrage of earlier this week, which took out one of the Patriot missile launchers, at least partially, and also hit arms warehouses, show that the Russians are not about to relent and that they are still very effective in their destruction of Ukraine's military capability, even with the flow of weapons coming in from the West. And finally, the Ukrainian claims of shooting down Russian hypersonic missiles, which have been promoted by Western media. The Russians just said that they did not send as many missiles as were reported. They're poo-pooing the claims, and many military experts as well are saying that the Ukrainians could not take down hypersonic missiles with their existing air defense system. So here's the point. There should have been a diplomatic solution in the beginning. There could have been. The Russians were asking for that for 8 years. There was the fake Minsk Accord in which the Western governments, including France and Germany, admitted that they had no intention of living up to the agreements they signed. So you could have had mutual security agreement, you could have had a neutral Ukraine, which means no NATO, and autonomy for the Donbass. This was rejected repeatedly by the West. So the question now, with Ukraine in a desperate situation, losing large numbers of people, the destruction of many power plants and roads and military infrastructure, will the Ukrainians agree to the Russian negotiated settlement, or will they fight to the last Ukrainian as the NATO forces are demanding? If the West continues to escalate, of course, we face the danger of being on the brink of a nuclear war with Russia, especially if Zelensky uses some of the newer missiles that are coming into him to attack sites in Russia. For more on this Ukraine situation, I'd urge you to use the link below to my dialogue with Helga Zepp-LRouche yesterday, where she detailed very thoroughly the whole situation in Ukraine. Now, secondly, just briefly on the Durham report. This was the report that was issued by a special counsel that was set up to look into the charges of FBI corruption in the Russiagate case. Now, naturally, the media, which was totally complicit in the attacks on Trump and Putin and the fraudulent story of Russiagate, they're saying this is a big nothing burger. Well, the reality is that as far as it goes, it fully confirms what the LaRouche organization was saying, that you had an alliance, an integrated attack on Trump and Putin coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign, the Obama administration, the security state, that is the FBI and the CIA, and the media. And on this, I have some quotes from Larry Johnson, a former CIA operative, who said the following, that what the Durham report correctly notes is that the Russiagate story was to basically destroy Russia. That was one of the objectives of the FBI fabrications. And because Trump was seen as someone who was not going to go along with these objectives, they had to destroy him or try to destroy him. He added, the FBI is totally corrupt, as is proven in the Durham report. It's a totally politicized organization. It really has completely discredited itself. This report confirms that very top officials at the FBI were nothing but liars, and engaged in a coup to try to overthrow a democratically elected president. And he goes on to say that it's the FBI as well as the CIA's credibility that's been called into question, that they can no longer be trusted, that the CIA was so prominently damaged by the admission that the 51 people who signed that letter claiming the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, that they were making it up. They were lying. So none of these people have credibility. So that's what Larry Johnson had to say. Now, I would argue that the Durham report is incomplete. As far as I know, there's very little on the role of the British in the provocation. It does mention the Steele report, of course, but there's a whole background to that. But it confirms much of what was released in the January 30th Columbia Journalism Review article by former New York Times reporter Jeff Gerth, who reported on the coordination of intelligence agencies, the Democratic Party, and the media. The problem is there's still no accountability, and the media in particular continues to deny the truth that's now been exposed in multiple cases of their corruption and the coordination with the Clinton campaign, with people like Congressman Adam Schiff and others. Now, speaking of accountability or no accountability, we have the third point, the raising of the CIA role in the Kennedy assassination by Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's been interviewed on numerous podcasts. You can find him on many of them. There's a very interesting one he just did with Russell Brand. But it's not being covered in the mainstream media for obvious reasons, because they're still part of a cover-up. In fact, there was an article in the May 16th National Review speaking about the treatment being given to Kennedy's campaign, even though he's at 19% in some of the polls. They're dismissing him as a fringe figure. And this article in National Review described Kennedy as getting the, quote, LaRouche treatment, unquote, the way Lyndon LaRouche was dismissed by the media, even though we now know that much of what LaRouche was saying about the corruption of the establishment, about the corporate takeover of government, about the war policies of the neoconservatives and the depression policies of the neoliberals has been confirmed by events. And yet still LaRouche was considered a fringe figure of no importance. Well, we have the statements from Robert F. Kennedy on the CIA and his uncle. Just read a couple of them in case you haven't seen them yet. He said that the first phone call his father, that is Robert F. Kennedy Sr., who was the Attorney General and the brother of John F. Kennedy, the first call he made after being informed of his uncle's assassination, Robert F. Kennedy called the CIA desk officer in Langley, Virginia, and asked him, "Did your people do this?" He then spoke to several other people, including John McCone, who came over to the House. McCone was at the time the acting CIA director. And he asked McCone the same question: was it our people that did this to my brother? And he said, quote, "It was my father's first instinct that the agency had killed his brother." Now, there's just an incredible volume of evidence that points to the role of the CIA, people like Allen Dulles, and the networks in the CIA, including E. Howard Hunt, that had the capability of doing it coming off the Bay of Pigs crisis. But the important point is that Kennedy is also connecting this, RFK Jr. is connecting this to the continued corruption of these networks today, that they're the same ones that supported the permanent warfare that John F. Kennedy was opposed to. And that this is what we see today in Ukraine, what we saw in Iraq, in Libya, in Afghanistan. So this is an extremely important discussion that he's initiating. And our mission is to defeat the neoliberal war party, to restore the traditional U.S. foreign policy represented by John F. Kennedy. It was anti-colonial. It was a call for peace among sovereign nations, to back away from the threat of nuclear war, which Kennedy himself confronted during the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. And I'm attaching a link at the bottom of the description page to a leaflet that we've written about a commemoration on June 10th of the 60th anniversary of Kennedy's powerful speech delivered at American University. We'll have an event on that day, and hopefully we can count on your support and your involvement. Copy the leaflet, distribute it, get your friends talking about it. It's about time we had an honest discussion about the role of the corrupt networks of the corporate cartels, the military-industrial complex, their control over the institutions of government, which are supposed to represent your interests. Now, next week, one of the stories I'll be covering will be the ongoing effect of the move toward de-dollarization based on the collapse of the Western economies, the same loss of credibility for the financial networks that we see in terms of the intelligence community. Not surprising, because the intelligence community is essentially a corporate outgrowth of the corporate cartels that have bankrupted the Western economies between the implementation of green policies, quantitative easing, refusal to carry through debt reorganization, and so on. So I'll see you again Monday. Please take seriously this leaflet. Read it and think about it and distribute it. We have an opportunity now to not just end the war, but to defeat the networks behind it. And that's an opportunity we have to take. Hello, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Support our independence to produce videos like these. Become a member of the LaRouche organization at thelarrouche.org/member. By becoming a member for $25 or more, you'll get special access to the EIR Alert Daily Briefing and Weekly Magazine, which is what I read to stay on top of things.